Hi! So the very first thing that we should talk about is the proper knife angle if you're working on the tip. It's very important that you have a really sharp knife every time you're trying to do some tip work. So making sure that when you do your test, however that is, I usually check it on my thumbnail, that it has an adequate burr that pulls off a good amount of the nail or cane when you're working on the tip of the reed. So before we get started, make sure that your knife is really sharp and maybe refine it on the strop just to double check that it's not got any catches in the burr or anything. And then next, we're going to go ahead and put our reed on our mandrel just so we get some stabilization. And put our plaque in between our two blades. Classic setup. And what's really key about reed making, and basically everybody agrees on this is like a universal truth, you want to make sure that you have a little bit of cane right in the center of the tip. So kind of where you see the peak in my like my little rooftop there, which is the transition between the tip and the heart. You want to make sure there's a little bit of gold going straight down the middle. There's just a little bit thicker. And this doesn't mean a lot, and it varies for every reed how much cane you leave in the very center of the tip. So to ensure that that happens, you have to hold your knife at a very specific angle. So kind of thinking about how your arm will be angled. If you get like a chicken wing, that's totally fine. And turning your apparatus to the side will also help with that. So now that I have it turned a little bit, I want to start my scrape just on the edge. Do you see how I'm just taking a little bit off? Right on the very side of the tip. So that means that I'm leaving cane in the very middle. So now when we move to the other side, you have to adjust your angle slightly more. And perhaps it's easier to see me working on this side from the camera angle. But I'm leaving that alleyway right down the middle of the reed.
So the reason why I chose this camera angle was to show you a different perspective. I know sometimes it's hard to tell from up top exactly the kind of angle that I'm getting, but it's kind of like the 30-degree angle between the edge of my knife blade and the surface of the reed. So if you need to put a little mirror at your workstation in front of you so that you can analyze the angle of your knife as you work, that's a totally great idea. That helped me a lot. And this is a flat knife angle that I'm showing you here, which we'll talk about in a moment for working on the very edge of the tip. So I'm kind of showing you the contrast between left side, right side, and then edge of the tip work.
And then another thing that I figured out far too late is, beside having that angle, is that having the very tip of the tip thin is very key. Not only because you want to ensure that you don't make a whistle, but also because you can never really judge a reed and its responsiveness unless the very tip of the tip has no quote-unquote clack. So this is something that Professor Lichtenwalter talks a lot about. And you want to make sure that you hear that clicking. So you don't want any of that. You want the blade to come right off the end of the reed onto the plaque and have no clack or very little clack. So the way that I do that is I just get to the very tip of the tip and I just go straight off. And this is an occasion where you would use a flat blade angle. It's just working on the very tip of the tip. But if you're going to do the sides and the corners of the tip, which is the refining element of it, then you're going to make sure that you do just the sides and corners by keeping that good angle. And seriously, don't underestimate the kind of chicken wings you're going to have to do and how much you're going to have to manipulate the angle of your apparatus in order to get that right angle. It might feel funny at first, but it will become natural over time.
So this video is really to show you what I'm talking about with the whole chicken wing thing. I severely underestimated when I was a freshman and sophomore just how much I was going to have to move my arms to make this angle work. So you might even just practice this in a mirror to see.
So yeah, that's the first tutorial that I wanted to do because I feel like that's probably one of the most important things that you can learn. When you mastered this sort of thing, you get a much better understanding of how your reed is working. So it will give you a much more authentic crow when you ensure that you have stayed out of the middle of the center of the tip and also have scraped a little bit off of the end to where there's no more clack. So hopefully this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.